We are beautifully, beautifully, melanated.
Welcome to Beautifully Melanated podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sarah, and I am back again with my lovely co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Karen.
Hi, I'm Kay. Welcome. It's been a while, ladies. We have missed recording like this on Zoom, but lucky for me, I am in sunny Jamaica. And with the time difference, I am hot and you lot are cold.
I'm very jealous. Yeah.
I am as well. We're not that cold, okay? The sun has been out today. No, not like Jamaica, but you know.
It's not quite the same, but...
No.
No, it was 22 degrees at 6 a.m. this morning.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, yes, I'm here for a while. So I'm just glad we can still record, ladies, and still run our podcast because it's really important.
Definitely.
So it's my What in the World this week. So I do need to say we have a guest on our show tonight. She will join us for the What in the World, and then she'll introduce herself when we go into the main topic. So my What in the World, ladies, is quite an eye-opener, aren't they always? This is regarding the inquest of Aisha Cleary. And I'm reading from inquest.org.uk. So Aisha Cleary was born during the night of the 26th of September, 2019. She was found dead on the morning of the 27th of September after her mother, a highly vulnerable 18-year-old caregiver even, gave birth alone in a prison cell in HMP Bronzefield in Ashford, Surrey. This is the largest women's prison in Europe. Now an inquest will open into her death after her mother persuaded the coroner to examine the circumstances of Aisha's death and whether any failures in the care provided to Aisha's mother or Aisha contributed to her death. The coroner will hear the evidence of expert pathologists and consultant obstetrician to determine whether Aisha was born alive or stillborn. So a little bit of background. Aisha's mother, now her name is not given. So she will be known as Aisha's mother throughout this. She was remanded to HMP Bronzefield on the 14th of August, 2019, arriving with a prison escort record stating that she was 6 months pregnant. On the 19th of August, she was told by social services that they would be seeking a court order to remove her child at birth. She did not engage consistently with maternity services. Now here comes the whatabouteries. Anyway, during the evening of the 26th of September, Aisha's mother went into labor. At around 8:07 p.m., she used the intercom in her cell to request medical attention. No nurse or ambulance was called, and no one checked on her. Aisha's mother pressed her cell bell again at around 8:32 p.m., but the call was not answered. At around 9:27 p.m. and 4:19 a.m., Aisha's mother's cell was checked by prison officers as part of a routine roll count. But on neither occasion was anything untoward noticed in her cell. At around 8:15 a.m., a prison officer did the morning unlock and did not notice that the cell had significant amounts of blood on the floor and the walls. At around 8:21 a.m., two prisoners alerted prison staff to blood in Aisha's mother's cell. A prison officer who then attended discovered that Aisha's mother had given birth during the night. Nurses attended and attempted to resuscitate Aisha without access to a pediatric resusc equipment and called an ambulance. Around 9:03 a.m., paramedics confirmed that Aisha had died. So the inquest is planning to hear evidence from approximately 50 witnesses, 50, including social services, community and prison midwifery services, prison healthcare staff, officers, former prisoners, as well as expert evidence. So I'm not going to go into the bullet points as to what they're going to hear, but she gave birth alone. And it doesn't say here in the article, but when I first heard about it, she actually gnawed through the umbilical cord with her teeth to try and save the baby's life. And her baby died. So for me, I don't see why an inquest is needed. We clearly know what happened. People should be going to prison, preferably HMS Bronzefield too, for what they've done to her. So ladies, what are your thoughts before I jump in? What are you thinking on this?
I'm struggling for words, actually, Kay, with this. I'm so angry that this girl has been treated like this. I'm angry that the baby has died. And I'm kind of shocked. So I've got a few questions. I'm thinking, and I know I was saying earlier to you guys, I don't understand how, okay, for a start, she's 6 months pregnant. So
yeah, when she was remanded.
Exactly. So for a start, I don't feel that she should have been imprisoned anyway at 6 months. Something else should have been put in place. I'm sure there's something that could have been put in place. There is. I know there is, but they didn't want to. And secondly, I'm thinking, you know, surely in a prison, you'd know when an inmate was due to give birth. It's pretty obvious when someone gets near enough to give birth. It's obvious. And if they knew she was 6 months gone, they're going to know when she's due. So they're deciding what to not pay attention to her when she's about to give birth. That in itself seems, I mean, that's where the negligence seems to have, I'm not sure about peaked. It was peaked when, you know, when the baby wasn't found. Then you have these people coming in and out, you know, doing these supposed checks. Now, I don't even think they probably did, because I'm sorry, but there's no way you could. I think the last check, did you say someone actually went into the cell or looked in and didn't see the blood? That's impossible. Yep. How big are prison cells? It's impossible.
Labour has a certain smell.
Yeah.
Come on.
You couldn't not notice a baby had been born. I'm sorry, I just think it's ridiculous.
But
poor baby and poor mother.
The sound. What, does she just silently give birth and struggle by herself for however many hours? I'm thinking about my own experience of childbirth.
Yeah, exactly.
It was not a quiet experience.
No, it is not.
But maybe I'm wondering if maybe there weren't the staff around. You know, they said they made all these checks. I'm wondering whether there's people just couldn't be asked, or they were so short-staffed that this prison couldn't be asked, or something like that. Because there's no way in hell, unless you're kind of blind and deaf, you could have missed that.
And yet it took 2 prisoners to alert them to blood in herself.
Takes the mick, really, doesn't it?
I almost swore myself. I forgot to say, ladies, when I'm missing from that inquest report, is that the prison officers were given counselling for discovering her, but she herself was not given any counselling.
I mean,
before we even get to that,
God.
I just got to backtrack slightly. Okay, so at 6 months, you don't have to be showing. Some people have quite protruding stomachs, some less so. So perhaps she wasn't showing, but it's on her records that she's pregnant.
That's right.
So you would have thought that they would have monitored that. Okay, so let's just say the baby could have been premature. We don't know if it's full term or premature. Full term.
Wasn't
right.
premature.
So it's around about the time that she should be giving birth.
Oh, hang on. She arrived on the 14th of August, 6 months pregnant.
Right.
And then went into labor on the 26th of September. So maybe not quite full term.
Okay. But it's around about the time where they should be, you know,
checking her, at least.
Checking her, and they're awaiting the arrival of this baby, right? Okay. So then she goes into labor and no one hears. The thing that struck me is that she actually did call for help.
Twice.
And that call was not answered.
Yep.
Not once, but twice. Now that in itself is negligent, because not only, I mean, if you're alerted to someone's cell, one would hope that somebody would be available to go. It's the point, isn't it? But giving her conditions, you know, the fact that she was pregnant and about to give birth. It's even worse that her call wasn't answered. And then let's just say she gives birth. It's quite a noisy, difficult experience because it must have been traumatic on her own.
Of course.
So then she probably called for help, all sorts. I mean, I know that prison, they do say that there's a shortage of staff and all that sort of stuff. I do get that. But this is extreme. This is like somebody falling over and bumping their head and went unnoticed. This is a woman giving birth.
That's right.
In a prison cell on her own.
Yep.
And then when you said she gnawed her way through the umbilical, I mean, honestly, words fail me because
that's a mother that's desperate to save her baby.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we'd all have done that. Let's be real, ladies. I'd have gnawed that too because I love my baby. And I want
look at the length of time that she was left unchecked. So remind me of the time. So from the night.
So at 8:07 she called.
Right.
And 8:32 p.m. she called. Nobody answered. Around 9:27, so just over an hour after the first call, apparently prison officers checked.
They didn't. That's such a lie. They did not. They're lying. They're lying.
And they checked again at 4:19 a.m.
Which they didn't.
They said.
But they couldn't have.
They couldn't have checked. No.
Because you can't miss that.
You can't miss that. It's not like I fell over and broke my ankle and went, ooh. Exactly. You can't.
And at 8:15 a.m. again, yet another check. Staff have changed.
Did they
did
not notice anything untoward, they said.
Did they check with a blindfold on? Because
that's what I'm saying. Because they have sent a staff member that's blind and deaf or something.
Blind and deaf for sure.
Yeah.
I think they've got I think that they are actually quite rude to say that they checked. It'd be better if they said, you know what, we just didn't go.
We were negligent, we didn't bother checking.
Yeah. Please just say that. But to say that you checked when clearly you didn't.
You didn't.
Or you deliberately left her in that state.
Yeah.
That's the only other.
Which is worse.
That's what I was going to say.
They must have seen her and decided to leave her.
That many people, though, I feel like one negligent, awful staff member, but all of them leaving her?
All of them.
God, that would be horrific.
I just wonder if they may have, I mean, I don't know who these people are, but they may have possibly like enjoyed it or something. Like they're watching it and being like,
God.
Because we know that people like police officers and things like that, there have been people like that who are sadistic and I would argue psychopathic. Exactly, with that kind of stuff. And so I wonder if they can legally say we checked, but by check they mean they saw and didn't care enough to do anything.
That would be so bad.
But then they have to be accountable to someone, don't they? So I'm hoping that the right thing will be done and justice will be served, because this is just abhorrent, actually.
I think, Karen, you're right. To even try and defend this is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
At 8:15, another prison officer said they checked and they didn't notice anything untoward. At 8:21, how many minutes is that? 7 more minutes? 2 prisoners alert them to the amount of blood coming from her cell. Now, let's all respect ourselves here. You cannot defend that. You're like, just stop talking.
Exactly.
Just hold your hand up and say, we messed up. We were wrong. But this defense is nonsense.
It's ridiculous. I mean, there is no defense.
No, there is none.
And it would be
really try.
Interesting to see what comes of this. I guess the flip side of it is, I wonder if people are looking, because the thing is, when you go to prison, or when a person goes to prison, you are paying, you're serving time for the crime that you have committed, right? But it means that you are not stripped of your human rights. You should still be fed, watered, whatever else
meant to
you
be
need to survive. Now, this is completely separate. So if people are looking at it like, well, she was in prison, whatever. No, that's not the issue.
We're not talking about being in South America, one of the prisons, in South America, where people run it like it's not, is it? It's not that.
No, it's not.
Exactly. So there's no excuses.
Literally none. But maybe in South America or another third world, in quote, country, they might have received more compassion.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think anywhere would have.
Exactly. That even if the services weren't available, other prisoners might have called for help, or maybe
the prisoners would have delivered the baby. One of those places,
exactly,
probably.
or offered help. And the galling thing is, they actually took the counselling offered because they were traumatized, and no counselling was offered to Aisha's mum.
What? I just don't understand.
At this point, I'd be a bad word, may I curse. Me can't even, no. But the fact that they took it, you go sit in front of a counsellor to talk about your trauma? Yours?
They didn't have any trauma. They didn't even see her.
The thing is, though, I think we're looking at it possibly from slightly the wrong angle, in that it's whoever is in charge of that prison, really, that's where the buck stops, isn't it? So who has allowed this to happen?
They've obviously become negligent, like one of those schools that needs to be shut down by Ofsted. They've become negligent for too long.
Yeah, the governor, or whatever they're called, I'm not sure what the terminology is, but they have allowed this to happen. Because to be fair, I mean, if they wanted to receive counselling because of the trauma they experienced, I'm not going to deny them that. But the fact that she wasn't offered any counselling is in itself ridiculous. I mean...
And it was their job to protect her.
Is their job to protect her? Absolutely, that is their job. They wouldn't
have been traumatised if they had done their job properly and gotten her medical attention.
Exactly. And now she has post-traumatic stress, and they are claiming they also have post-traumatic stress. You earn that.
How do they have post-traumatic stress though? Because if they said if they said that they didn't see anything, didn't hear, they never heard about her giving birth, they never saw anything. Where exactly is the stress for them coming from then? If they're shooting themselves in the foot then.
Are they saying that because they found her?
If they're so
when
stressed
they eventually found her, that's where that's the stress.
One person eventually found her.
Two prisoners.
Okay. So how the heck do everyone get offered? I'm sorry, but no, that makes no sense at all. They could not have PTSD.
No, they have something else.
And if they did, they can pay for it.
I'm right.
Yes. But even then, she's not even held in mind, even after this horrific trauma she went through, to spend 12 hours in a cell with her dead baby.
It's horrific.
Do you know what the other thing that strikes me is that because she was living previously in a care home, is that right?
Yeah,
so she was a care leaver.
I think the other difficulty is that she doesn't have an advocate. She doesn't have anyone to fight for. She doesn't have, because you can imagine perhaps somebody else who has that strong family network, that possibly wouldn't have been allowed to happen because she would have had an advocate. She'd have had, people in her corner. But I think this is
against
really, absolutely.
So we're going to remove the baby at birth. I don't know why that's even relevant here. And to say she did not consistently engage with maternity services is also irrelevant.
Exactly.
What's that got to do with anything?
No.
Yeah. And I wonder if in different circumstances, people would even care about like if you strip away the setting of it, and it was a random 18-year-old giving birth on their own, calling for help and no one helping them. I wonder if they'd be a bit more compassionate and really think about it, because that seems like trying to defend themselves. But she didn't deserve that. Nothing. I think almost nothing she could have done means that she deserved that, because giving birth is traumatizing in and of itself. Then the trauma of losing your child.
That's right.
And then I imagine there must have been points where she thought, I might die from this, because people can die in childbirth, even at hospitals.
100%. 100%, absolutely.
Yeah, it's scary.
I wonder if there was, I have no idea, but it's a possibility that it was quite deliberate, because when it says that she didn't engage in anything, are they trying to say then she didn't engage in anything? She wasn't liked, is what they're trying to say. She didn't do what she told.
I think she was
rebellious. She was
the way people think about prisoners and stuff. I think that's what it was as well. She was a prisoner. She had everything against her. She was a child in care. She was obviously a mother that was highly unstable and was going to have her baby removed. But there's reasons, there's reasons why people end up like they do. And I think pretty much every single person in prison, needs to be spoken to. Because
and why does the baby have to be punished for that? The baby didn't do anything.
Exactly.
It's a really good point.
She had every right to have that baby safely.
Exactly.
Yes, she did.
It's an innocent right.
It's a human right.
Human rights, regardless of whether that baby was taken away. And like you said, Kay, it would be traumatizing enough for her to go through all that and then the baby is passed. But to have to stay in the cell alone, bleeding out with a dead baby is just horrific. And to not be recognised and offered any kind of therapeutic support is just insane, isn't it? It just makes you so angry as a mother. It really does.
And then how is she meant to go back into the world again?
Absolutely.
Because isn't that what prison's supposed to be? You know, reformative of whatever.
Yeah.
She'll be worse off now, Aliyah. She'll be worse off now.
Yeah.
Her mental health will be worse. Any addictions will be worse. Her mental, everything's going to be worse. And then she'll end up in prison again. It's just not fair, is it?
She will.
The way they've ruined her life is so unfair.
Yeah, it has. Ruined her life.
I'm flabbergasted. We already know the statistics for Black women in labor. More than 5 times more likely to die in labor than white women. That there's literally a charity called 1 in 5. So she is a Black girl. Already they should have known. Let's pay close attention to her maternal care in the prison system. But Sarah, you're spot on. Why are you in prison in a 6-month pregnant young lady? Why? What were you hoping to achieve by putting her in prison in the first place at 6 months pregnant?
Actually, it's interesting because you both mentioned that there could have been alternative sort of not punishments, but alternative provisions, really. What were you thinking of?
I was thinking about some kind of day centre or some kind of thing where she was held responsible and she has to check in. Couldn't they put a tag on her? As far as I'm aware, she wasn't in for a serious crime like murder or something else like that. So seeing as it wasn't kind of all crimes are serious, I guess. But you know what I mean? I don't personally think something like, I don't know, holding up a shop at ransom or something. I don't know if it says there, Kay, why she was in prison, but I feel like
it doesn't.
I feel like it's something that they could have managed. 6 months pregnant, couldn't they have her on tag? They put enough people in this country on tag for all sorts of rubbish.
Even if she did what was super heinous, that's not the punishment. The punishment is going to prison. That's where that stops. Even if she had murdered someone or something, that's what the punishment is. You can't then go, I'm going to put extra punishment on top and make you suffer this horrific thing because I felt like it.
Couldn't she have had all these suspended sentences that they give people that probably shouldn't get suspended sentences?
Exactly.
Men. You know, couldn't they have just given her some kind of suspended sentence? Then she's had the baby. Okay, then the baby is looked after, and then she serves her time.
I think that is really interesting, and I would like to know what the crime was because, like you say, if it was it depends what they deem serious crime. I think the whole judicial system needs a bit of an overhaul.
Oh, it's rubbish. Absolute hack.
Yeah,
I was thinking, Karen. She was already in the care system. They could have put her in a foster placement for mother and baby until she gave birth. There was absolutely no need to imprison her, even if you tagged her so that she couldn't leave the community you placed her in. She could have been looked after. She already used to the care system. There are foster carers who specialize in mother and baby placements.
That's right.
There was no need to put her in prison. But the fact that you did and didn't think, let me check her welfare, it's inhumane. And
that was inhumane.
I don't know how people make sense of that in their heads and go to beds at night, thinking we did everything we could, because you should be done for murder.
That's probably why they're taking the therapy. Murder. They know what they did was wrong. It's probably guilt more than anything else. If they have consciences at all, then I imagine that's what they took the therapy for. It wasn't any PTSD. It was, oh my God, I did that to someone.
This is one client referral I would not take because I could not be impartial or empathic or non-judgmental.
Nor could I.
And I'd be raging.
So, me too.
Yeah, they wouldn't be coming to me with that.
No.
So I signed so this charity called We Level Up. Their Twitter handle is @we_level_up. They had almost like an open book you could sign and send a message to Aisha's mom. And I did, and she got 600 and something messages of support going into the inquest from the public. Now, this charity, they're feminist campaigners. They work in community for gender justice and bodily autonomy. So do give them a follow on Twitter. They're following this really closely. And at inquest.org, I think, is also another organization that supports minorities and people of color who need help with legalities. So
can you
again,
put that in the show notes, please, Kay? Because I'd like to message
put it in the show notes.
Mother as well.
Yeah, and there's a petition also to stop sending pregnant women to prison.
Mm-hmm.
That's on their page.
See, this reminds me of the episode that we had with Eileen, where she talked about the fact that she wasn't pregnant, but she had a daughter. And she talked about, alternatives to put in mothers of young children and pregnant mothers in jail in the first place. And Aaliyah's right. How reformative is it actually?
It's just ridiculous. And it's when I looked more into this afternoon, I found another issue of another young girl, the same kind of age as Aisha's mother, that had a baby in the toilet in prison. I think that was HMP style, which has got horrible reputation anyway, had a baby in the toilet and it was stillborn. And it's just, I just don't understand. And I feel like just because they're in prison, they're looked down on as pieces of
they're not
rubbish.
animals, are they? Absolutely, yeah.
It's not fair. And it just seems like, I was surprised to see another one. I was like, oh my gosh, is this common? If this is common, we seriously have a serious problem here.
Yeah.
We do.
It would be interesting to see how many cases of a similar nature there are.
Yeah.
The occurrences of this kind there are.
At this particular prison, there was another young woman who died in custody, which has also been tagged onto the page on this, but I haven't read it. But this prison seems to have an issue looking after women in their care. And it's a women's prison, the largest in Europe. I mean, that's nothing to brag about. But okay, that's your flex. You're the largest women's prison in Europe, and this is the care you offer. I'm sending so much love and healing energy to Aisha's mom.
Definitely.
She's going to need it.
She is.
Whatever the outcome of this inquest is, her baby cannot come back. They will not bring her baby back. And I do hope she is getting therapy. But I'm going to follow the case closely because I want to see what support is out there for her.
Definitely.
And I'd like to actually see what comes of the inquest. That's what I'd like to know.
Lessons will be learned. We apologize unreservedly. Can I tell you the script already? Come on, you know it. This should not have happened, but it has, and we offer apologies, and lessons will be learned. And this is the script they spew out every single time.
Yeah.
No lessons will be learned.
No.
Do you think no one will be held accountable? Do you not think?
Unlikely. I have no faith in the system that anyone is going to be held accountable.
Zero faith in it.
Maybe a slap on the wrist. You should do your better checks. Next time, open the door, go in the room, and if you see blood, do call for help.
We'll take you on a training course. You'll go on a day's training course about how to inspect a cell properly. Tick. That's what it'll be.
Or a professional curiosity. Tick.
It will be like the driving.
Open your eyes.
It will be, yeah. It'll be like the speed awareness test I had to go on. You know what I mean? It'll be like that kind of thing.
I remember. I've done that. No, Karen, I don't think any justice will be served. Maybe there will be a financial award, but that would probably come from the jury at the inquest, not. You know what I mean? If they cared about her at all, they would have offered her therapy immediately.
Of course.
Trauma therapy, but they didn't. So, no, I have no hope.
Yeah, shocking.
That is really sad. So here we go, ladies. What in the world gets worse and worse? So moving into this week's topic, we will finalize, and I say finalize very loosely because it's never ending in terms of development. Are we going to call it a series or our discussion series on identity and how we identify those who are in the diaspora, those who have been born and raised in a country different to their parents, and all of that. So our Instagram lives cannot be uploaded to Spotify. I did try. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes for the Instagram lives so our listeners can catch up, because I think they were really good episodes. But what we wanted to talk about tonight was the identity of our children. So as a refresher, Karen, how did you identify in our previous discussions? What's your identity?
Okay, so previously I mentioned the fact that I consider myself to be Black British. I would say I am of Jamaican heritage, but I understand that my ancestry is that of Africa. So it's kind of three-tiered, three-layered.
And we briefly touched on children. So then therefore I wonder how your children would identify.
Well, I actually had a discussion with my youngest today. And I asked her, I said, how do you identify? I gave her a bit of context. And she said, I'm Jamaican. I said, oh, that's interesting. She said, yes. Yeah, she said, I know that's my culture, that's my background. She said, I identify with being Black British. She said, but the Britishness I'm not terribly proud of. It was interesting.
Interesting.
It was very interesting. I did ask her to join us, but she declined.
Did she say more on what bit she's not proud of?
Yeah, she said when I go on holiday, like school trips and things, if I'm abroad, and they say, oh, you're English. She said there's a part of her that feels quite embarrassed about that side. She says that we are sort of, I don't know, like in Europe, we don't have a very good rep.
She's right. The Brits abroad are just embarrassment.
Yeah, yes. And that's how she feels. That's really interesting. I mean, she's only 14, so to have that view is quite interesting.
Eyes wide open, Karen.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So she said, she understands that, yes, she is British and that she's been born here. But she said, that's the bit she tends to leave off so much. I thought that was interesting. But so she says, my culture's Jamaican. That's my background. That's me. And interestingly, what she said was she finds that students at her school who are also Black, she said sometimes she can see that they try to, in order to fit in with their white peers, sometimes they behave quite differently. And the way she described it was, she said, Mum, when you see a group of girls and there's a group of boys and the girls tend to sort of behave in a certain way to attract the boys, or, like they want to be, I don't know, liked by the boys. She said it's a bit like that. You can see these Black girls completely metamorphosized into somebody completely different because they want to be accepted by their white counterparts. And I thought, that's really interesting. So she said, that's her experience of school. And I asked her how, because her school is quite diverse. There are still more children who are not of colour than there are of colour at her school, but it is reasonably diverse. And I asked how she manages that. And she said, well, she has quite a diverse friendship group. Her friends tend to come from all over the place, or parents come from all over the place. She named me quite a few different countries. So that's quite nice. But she said she feels the friendship group she has now, she feels that she can be herself. She said, I don't have to change to fit in. She said, I'm just me. She said, sometimes, you might sort of talk about different things with different groups of people because you have different interests, perhaps. But she said, she doesn't feel that she needs to change herself. She said, I'm just me. So that was quite refreshing to hear.
I was going to say, that's lovely. And I'm glad she's had that experience. A lot of people don't. It's a good
absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. It's really nice.
So my eldest, we had a conversation about this a while ago. And she said that when she was at school, there were a large proportion of children who had African parents, so parents who were born in Africa. And she said it felt like Black Squad, that you couldn't penetrate because she didn't feel that she fitted into that group. And she said she felt very Jamaican by comparison. And she said she almost felt quite ostracized. She didn't feel that she was welcomed into that, like she wasn't part of it. So then she found that her friendship group was different. So I think it was like a mix of different ethnicities, but she definitely identified that group of Black African children who identified as African, I think. And she said that was really, really hard to penetrate, even though obviously she's Black herself, just wasn't the same. I thought that was interesting too, because you just think, Black people would, and I guess not. I think the other thing is, and perhaps this is a bit of naivety from me, I wondered if she would gravitate to children of color, or would she, who would she form sort of lasting friendships with? So for example, my youngest today was talking about hair. So she said in her friendship group, even though there are white children in that group, she talks about hair. She talks about her afro. She talks about her braids, her plaits. And they, even if they don't understand it, they're happy to share in that conversation. And she said, if someone went to touch her hair, she said that her friends don't do that anyway, but if somebody came to touch her hair, she would say to them, actually, I don't feel comfortable with that. And she said what she found with some of the other Black girls is that they would allow people to touch their hair for fear of offending someone. And she thought that was quite interesting. She said, it's almost as if in order to fit in, you have to allow people to do things that actually you don't feel comfortable with. So
what, to allow them to pet you like you're a pet,
like an animal? Yeah. She did, and she said, I personally, it's not something I like, and I've expressed that, and they're respectful, and it's fine. But she said, I've seen other girls just let them. She said even the N-word. She said the N-word is used quite loosely.
Say what now?
Yeah, she did say that, and she said where she would say that's not acceptable. I don't feel that's an acceptable term to use. She said that some of the other girls, for, not wanting to offend, allows that to be said. Then
it is offensive. So they are okay to be offended.
In order to fit in,
In order to fit in.
So where do they draw the line then?
Sad.
Where do they draw the line? If that's okay, then where do you draw the line?
So that's an interesting conversation I'd like to have with them. I mean, this is second hand. I'm just listening to what my youngest is telling me. But she was saying, there's certain things that that's her line. Like she thinks that's inappropriate. But for some children, they've allowed that and kind of under the guise of, it's just music, or it's just this, or it's just that, because they don't want to offend.
But isn't it so sad that people that young are so aware of white fragility?
Yes, very sad.
100%. Yeah.
I thought that's something that would, I don't know, become more apparent to a person as they got older. I think it's quite sad that they're that aware that people get so, about race, when in reality, that's the only way that you become less ignorant and you can interact with Black people in a way that isn't offensive. That's how you do it. You have to make mistakes and learn. I think it's sad that they're protecting their white peers like that.
And I think you're right. I think they are protecting their peers, but also I suppose that they are thinking they don't want to be ostracized. So if that's going to be the backlash, if they're going to be ostracized because they've taken offense or because they don't like something, they'd rather just
not say it. I understand with the hair stuff, because I think I've had it times in my life when I was living in a more predominantly white area, and even my daughter, I've seen people will touch your hair, and whilst they're touching it, they'll say, "Can I touch your hair?"
Yeah.
So there's no, but they're already touching it. They've touched it now. I've seen it happen to my daughter. They've already touched it. Oh, can I touch it? Well, you've touched it now. And she doesn't even say anything about it, because we haven't had the conversation about it yet, but I will now. Actually prompted, I'm going to have the conversation with her, because it's a bit like when you're pregnant, someone comes and touches your belly. I've got a real problem with that. Yeah. Some stranger comes and puts their hands in your belly. Like, can you imagine? You wouldn't go up in Starbucks and go and just touch someone, would you?
You wouldn't. I do ask. I have to say, I do ask, because I do like to touch a little bump. But that's if I'm familiar with the person.
I would never dream of doing that.
I would always ask.
Yeah. But strangers, Karen, we all know, I'm sure we've all had it when we're pregnant. Strangers will come and touch your belly. What?
Yes,
like
they do.
A stranger, I think that's just weird.
They do.
If you don't know that's just because that's just personal space, isn't it?
They do. But they feel you're pregnant, so therefore they must touch you.
No, that's just rude. If I didn't know the person, I would never do that. No, I wouldn't.
See, I learned to bob and weave. You're not getting to my hair. I see that hand coming towards my head, and I've done.
But they were behind, Karen. They were okay. They were behind. I remember Naya last time someone touched Naya's hair about 3 weeks ago. Naya was sitting and the person was behind her. It was actually one of her friend's mums who was white, and touched the hair.
You know,
That's
and then said,
attack.
"Is that okay?" Yeah, from behind. And Shania whipped round. By that time, they'd already touched her hair.
Right. See, my issue with that kind of touch is it's non-consensual.
That's right.
So I'm with Sarah. Where does it stop? If you allow someone to touch you without giving consent, first it's your hair. So if they wanted to touch your boobs to see what color your nipples are, would you allow them? Where does it stop?
I think if you're okay with being people saying the M-word all around you, if that's okay, then I'm just worried about where the bar goes then, because that's just where next. Like Kay said, I mean, what's okay then? It's worrying, isn't it?
Can I just say, Mum, why would you touch to see the colour of a nipple?
Because Black women's bodies are fetishized. We know they're fetishized and hypersexualized.
I just burst out laughing. I was
what I'm saying is, if you're giving into every curiosity, should someone go, "Oh, are your nipples different to mine?" What are you going to go? Have a look? Or are you going to be offended at that point and goes, "Let's not be ridiculous here"? It's the idea that, and oftentimes when children are abused and we wonder how it happened for so long, it's because they're not taught that their body belongs to them and every touch should be consensual, including a hug and a kiss from granny.
That's right. That's 100% right.
That's not even a race thing to me. That's just a...
Oh, it's not a race thing, but my point is, if someone is fetishizing you and being curious about your hair and all of that, and you go, "Yeah, go right ahead, just so not to offend you, I'm going to let you touch me," that is no different to an abusive setup.
It's interesting.
I think it's giving children the confidence and having enough self-worth to say, "I don't like that. No, thank you." And that's really, I think adults struggle with that, you know.
Adults do.
Yeah, I'm 100%, I'm telling you.
Definitely.
So I think children, especially children saying to an adult, "No, thank you." That's really hard because we're told you should do as you're told. And, you know, we're the adults, we know. But you're quite right. You know, if your daughter's friend's mum stretched over to touch her hair, even if she'd seen it coming, would she have felt confident to say, "Actually, no, thank you, Julie," whatever, and I'm just making up a name. "No, thank you. Please don't do that."
You're right, Karen, because as an adult, she wouldn't, I don't know, she'd have come to talk to me because I'm going to have a conversation with her about it anyway. But I think I noticed with her friends it's different, because even when I dropped her off to school this morning, one of her friends said, "Oh, Naya, wait a second, I've just got to get this bag out," or whatever. And Naya goes, "No, I'll see you in the classroom." And she just walked off and went on a road across the playground. So she's quite headstrong. When it comes to her friends, she'll tell them. Yeah, she'd always been like that. She'll tell them what she thinks. She doesn't want to do it, she won't do it. But you're right, Karen, if it came to one of, a mum, I think she'd kind of struggle. Actually,
because it's that adult-child dynamic, isn't it? It's different. Yeah. And I think that's hard. And that's, I think, what we have to be able to empower our children to be able to say, "Adult, child, no, thank you," and that's okay.
Like that. And something like hairs, because I've taught my daughter all about, the Pantosaurus rule, where the swimming costume area where nobody's allowed to touch, apart from her, because that's also important to her. She's obviously it's her body. But nobody else is allowed to, nobody at all. And it's interesting because she knows about all that area. It's not allowed to be touched, but I haven't spoken enough about hair. And that's something that's prompted me tonight, ladies. So, yeah.
Having said that, if someone doesn't mind,
I guess, and it's their, if they want to.
It's them, isn't it? So if an adult doesn't mind, someone saying, "Oh, can I have a look at your braids?" Or, "Oh gosh, is your afro," whatever, and they don't mind, that's up to them, isn't it?
I think a black person to another black person, it's cool, but it's just a thing, isn't it? If one of my friends that's also black says, "Oh, I wouldn't mind."
Except my friends never think to want to touch my hair.
I'm going to next time, Kay. I'm going to come and do that in your head.
You can come rub my bald head. It feels amazing.
I love rubbing bald heads. I love it. I love that feeling of it.
Yeah,
do you know what? I was at a bus stop and I had a weave in, and a Jamaican lady approached me. She said, she lifted up my hair, like touched it. She said, "I said, "Yes, it's Yaki, but Thank you, but no.
Take your hand out of my hair.
How weird.
A swift slap would have fixed that.
At a bus stop. Wow.
Not met someone I don't know. Never met her. Mm-hmm. It was a good bit of yaki. Don't get me wrong.
We should teach our children defensive strategies. Arm up. You see that hand come in. Arm up, block it like a karate chop, or give it a slap.
I can't say that it would be any different if it was a black person. If I don't know you, I find it equally as offensive. I mean, for different reasons. That's just an invasion of my space. But yeah, I don't think I want anyone touching my hair. If I don't know you, I would never do that.
But some people are touchy, aren't they? I remember when a place where we used to work, me and you, Karen, and I said to you, there's a lady there that actually came up to me and just touched my face. And I thought, what the? And then she said to me, oh, slight bit of blush you've got on your cheek. I thought, but you didn't have to come up and actually smudge it in with your fingers. Like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I find it really invasive. But she was just doing that. I didn't really, this is not a close girlfriend of mine. And even then, you guys know I wouldn't like that. You know what I mean? So I think some people are very touchy and they don't know about boundaries.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think that was, to her, it was harmless. And yet to you, that was...
It's horrific.
Infringement of space, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, energetically, that's where my crown chakra is. So no, not every hand can come onto my head. Absolutely not. You will get slapped.
Yeah, definitely.
So Sarah, how do you identify from our previous discussions? If you want to go straight into identity for your daughter, go right ahead.
So I've said I identify as Black British, but like I mentioned before, I'm not 100% comfortable with it. My roots are in Jamaica and Gambia and Ireland, and I guess I am of mixed heritage. I hate all these labels. So yeah, Black British, but not 100% confident with it. I just tick that box. Yeah, it's still one I'm still thinking on about it, Kay. I'm still thinking on it. As I mentioned previously, I feel more confident when I think about my African roots. Oh, yeah, still thinking on it. And I feel like I need to create another category or something because I'm just not happy about it. And
make your own category.
Yeah, I need to have a good think about it. And my daughter, she just sees herself as a Black girl. She definitely thinks about her Jamaican roots. She does definitely kind of lean towards that side more than, say, British, because she doesn't quite understand. But then she is young, the Britishness, and she has visited Jamaica twice now, and she knows more about Jamaica than, say, the Queen, and is more interested in Jamaica than the Queen, like, of course, so she would always lean towards that side. I do talk to her about the Gambian side, the Irish side. She kind of just throws the Irish side over her shoulder. She's not interested in that. The Gambian side, I think when I actually take her to Africa, which I really want to do, then she'll see that side as well. She really wants to go to Ghana, my partner and myself as well. So I think, but for my daughter, because she's so young, I feel like she has to experience a country in order to infuse it in her life, I guess. And yeah, I mean, so yes, I guess she would say she's Black British, I guess, but she just sees herself as a young Black girl of Jamaican heritage. So yeah.
Oh,
I was just going to add something really quickly before you talk about your identity, Kay. And that is that I had the pleasure of taking my 2 children to Tanzania on holiday because we have a friend who is from Tanzania. And before we went, my youngest said, "Oh, but Mum, where are we going to sleep?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "But they have huts. Where are we going to sleep?"
No.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
No way.
No.
Because
that is not good.
She was about 6.
Okay, I thought it was recent. Oh, geez.
Oh, no.
But that's worse, Sarah. How on earth did she conceive Africa to be huts and huts?
No,
only at 6 years old.
That's media.
Yeah, that's media, isn't it? So I said, why? I said, why would you say? She said, because there'd be nowhere for us to sleep, Mummy. You know, they've got like huts and things. And like, she was so grateful, bless her. I get that. I said, oh, honey, no. Auntie's got a lovely house. We went there. It was an absolute mansion.
Yes. No, I had this exact experience when we went to Jamaica. I mean, I wasn't expecting huts. But when we went to Jamaica, I'd only ever heard of it through the news. And in the news, it was always portrayed as like sort of a third world country. And then I got there and I was like, they're living better than me. Like,
absolutely.
One room in my grandparents' house is bigger than any bedroom I've had.
Absolutely.
People don't know though, because my daughter's school, she was the teacher was actually saying to the children that, you know, she said in Africa people live in huts, and then basically, and of course, which she's insanely ignorant, and of course all the Nigerian parents raised hell. And Naya's best friend is Nigerian, and the mum kind of spoke to me about it, and she was incensed. So she goes, go and tell the teacher about grandma's house in Abuja, you know, go and anyway, yeah. So it is ignorance, but I think it is on the media so much, isn't it? But I just think it's awful. I mean, how can you think that? But then again, I think when you come but other countries, you know, like Kazakhstan or whatever, people thought it was all poor. And then they went there and it wasn't, you know, so yeah.
I knew there's a reason I hated Sport Relief, Red Nose Day, anything like that. Because that is all they portray.
That's just trauma porn, though.
It is poverty porn, and they don't talk about how they make Africa poor. And they show this one side of a continent.
I know.
It's a whole continent.
It's just stupid, isn't it? When
that's like saying every British person lives on an estate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's different areas. People live in different conditions, and it depends on your own. I mean, that's the classism thing. But yeah, like that's like saying every person, you know, lives in an estate. They don't. I know friends who, like, I remember I had a friend in primary school. I went to her house. I thought I was pretty well off as a child. I got to her house. I was like, oh God, people just live like that casually. She just had a huge house chandelier and like the thing, probably fake on retrospect, but I didn't know that. I was like 10. But
that's the thing though. I mean, I think though your daughter, Karen, she was only young, wasn't she? So it's not like now. If she said it now, it'd be like horrific. But she's only young, wasn't she?
She was literally, she was about 6. But the point is, that is what we are taught.
Yes, that's right.
I will go on a bit further to say that I taught at a secondary school some years back, and it was a geography lesson, and I can't remember what the topic was, but I decided to introduce Nairobi, Kenya. Mm-hmm. And I showed pictures of the city. Right? And, you know, skyscrapers and all that sort of stuff. And they said, where is this? And I said, oh, it's Kenya. It's a city in Kenya. And they were like, don't be silly. No, it's not. They didn't believe me. And I had to say, so then I pulled at some other pictures that looked like possibly what they were expecting.
Yeah, mud huts and red earth and safari.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, sort of red huts. And they said, that looks like Kenya. And I said, well, isn't it funny that you say that? Just like you've mentioned, Sarah, there are different parts to every country, and not everywhere looks like Brixton or looks like, I don't know.
Hackney. We live in London, so we must live in Hackney.
Exactly, or anywhere. We've just chosen these two places. But actually, it's at school that they really do need to do this work, because children really don't know. Because like you say, I'm not opposed to Red Nose Day in the sense that if it is raising money for charity, that's great. I'm not saying that's the best way to support the countries, because it's not. But I'm not opposed to aid or charity per se. I think it should be done alongside with other things. But I don't mind that. But I just think that there's not a true representation of African countries. You only ever see deprived areas, poverty and starvation. That's yes, it's true. It happens, absolutely. Yeah, children should know that. But
it happens here too.
That's what, yes, it does. And I'm not doing
the children starving, the houses that are uninhabitable.
Absolutely.
It happens in the West too.
It happens in the West, and it's people, African parents I speak to, are just so frustrated, you know, because they were saying, look, this happens here, You know, I mean, look at America, for goodness sake. America poverty issue and drug issue is horrific. Mm-hmm. But they never seem to highlight it, do they? Well, they do highlight it when they're a poverty porn thing. But, you know, America's portrayed huge superpower.
I know.
Their homelessness is ridiculous.
I mean, to be fair, you don't even have to think about the US. All you have to do is walk down a
Chatham High Street.
Yeah.
Chatham High Street right here.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, seriously, that, you know,
yes,
I just think that things are not portrayed in an unbiased way.
That's right.
There's no balance. That's what I'm saying. There was no balance.
Ladies, this is where I'm staying at the moment.
Lovely.
That's beautiful.
Really lovely. Yeah.
So Kato and us.
No, let me show you. Sorry, let me show you the. I want you to see the size of the house.
I can't
see it.
You can't see it.
Send us pictures via.
Beautiful. Yes, okay. I can see now. Lovely. Isn't that gorgeous?
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
Is that Auntie's house?
No, that's my niece's house.
Oh, because I remember when we first walked into Auntie's last time I went. And then I was like, this place was huge. And then she was like, oh, yeah, the upstairs isn't done yet. And I was like, you don't, and upstairs?
Yeah. All the rooms are en suite.
Lovely.
Yeah. And you could roll, all of my house in England could fit in one of the bedrooms. So this idea that poverty only exists.
Every house we've lived in England would fit within the property that they own.
Yeah, yeah. So, Aaliyah, you have plenty this week for Beautifully Off Topic. I'm going to come back on topic. So I identify as Black African via Jamaica. I was born in Jamaica, raised in Jamaica, but my soul is absolutely 100% African. I feel very connected to my ancestors and the lineage from which I come. And it does make it tricky. I had a conversation, ladies, with 3 people on the plane coming over. Now it's a 9.5-hour flight. You're kind of trapped. And there were 2 Jamaican women there saying that they're not Africans. And they could have thrown me out the plane window for saying they were. They would have. How dare I? They're not Africans, they're Jamaicans. I was like, okay, so where do you think you came from then? They were like, we were always there. We were always on the island. We were not part of those who were trafficked and enslaved. I was like, oh my God, you sound so ignorant. How
can they say that? It's impossible though. How can they always be on the island?
Because one of them said they didn't believe that the slave trade happened. I know, hold on to your hat. Okay. That white people made it up.
Were you sat next to Kanye West? Why would you think that how do you think the British Museum got all of their stuff? Like, obviously, they must have at least been
They think it's history distorted that, you know, Black people are always on the island and inhabited the island as we are today.
Well, no, there were people there, but they weren't Jamaicans.
Indigenous.
Yeah, exactly.
Indians, weren't they?
But that's what she's saying. She feels they were indigenous Black Jamaicans, not
Can
Africa.
I just echo what you said? I've actually had several conversations with Jamaicans who've said the same thing. So this is not an isolated case, which is even more worrying.
They're so worried.
Is actually a common conception that
we're not
they are indigenous people and that they are not African. And what is even more disturbing, I suppose, or concerning, is the reason for the dissociation from Africa. What is it about Africa that they so want to remove themselves from? I still, to this day, meet Jamaicans who say, I'm not African, as if it would be such a bad thing to be African. That is a problem. Because what makes you think that being African is such a negative? Where does that come from?
I asked the young lady who said she doesn't believe the slave trade happened. I said, tell me a little bit about, because, you know, she said, I'm born and raised in Jamaica, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, tell me a little bit about the infrastructure of Jamaica. Does any of it feel familiar now that you live in England? Yes. Like the road names, the names of the parishes, or judicial system, or education system? Yes. I go, so if you can believe the British colonized Jamaica, why can you not believe 12 million Africans estimated were trafficked and enslaved there, and that some of our practices still very much reflect the practices of our ancestors who were stolen? I don't know if I convinced her, but it just blew my mind that 2023, we're having this conversation about whether or not we've come from Africa. Well, for me, it's not a question. I am an African woman. I just happen to be born and raised in Jamaica. So then my children have also a complicated heritage. And seeing as she referred to me as mum earlier, can I introduce my daughter, Leah? She's joined us on the podcast to talk about her experience of shaping her identity in the UK. So over to you, Leah.
Yeah, okay. I had something to say earlier, but I kind of let it marinate a little bit. But with the point Karen brought up about the responsibility on schools, I 100% agree on that, because thinking of all the moments that have sort of impacted my identity one way or the other, almost all of them happened in school. Like the first time I ever questioned what it means to have this skin color, what it means to have hair like mine, was preschool. I cannot remember a single moment before that point where it even crossed my mind, I would say. And to be fair, this was in the early 2000s, so things have come a long way. But being the area I lived in as well, there wasn't many black people. I was like one of maybe 3 black people in my entire year group in school. So if you'd asked me when I was younger, how do I identify? Like I'd say up until probably 12, I think I definitely would have said Black British, because you can't, as much as you want to try, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, you cannot deny the black part of yourself. Like if you look at me, you can tell I'm not white. Well, most of the time. I've had some people debate that with me. And there are things that I do that my white friends wouldn't do culturally. Like, for example, eating cornmeal porridge. They don't know what that is. They think it's strange or whatever. Never heard of it. So I can't, I would have never denied that part of myself, but I would have really been heavy on the British thing. And I think when people used to ask me that when I was younger, I'd get quite defensive about the British part. So I'd be like, no. I was born in Kent and whatever, and I was raised here and blah, blah, blah. And now that I'm older and I know more, and I've gotten to see Jamaica twice now, technically 3 times, but I was 2 the first time, and I've got to be there and live there, I have a similar feeling to Portia, where I'm not, the British part of me does feel sort of shameful in a way, because I think for me, one, I honestly struggle living in this country with politics being what they are and everything. But it also feels like a betrayal of the Jamaican side of me. It's almost like when your parents get divorced and you're like, which one am I picking? Which way am I going? And I think it's quite hard to coexist. And especially nowadays when we're having such important conversations, it does feel like if you embrace any of your Britishness or whiteness or whatever mix you are, there does come with a bit of shame. Like, oh, so you not support that? Obviously I don't, but do you know what I mean? It kind of comes with certain associations. So I honestly don't know how I would answer the question, how do I identify? To be honest, it sent me into a bit of a existential crisis a bit about what that even means.
Join Sarah.
Yeah, yes. You can make your own.
We do. We need to create a category. It's difficult, isn't it? Though, when you kind of like, it's hard. It's difficult. Yeah. And the Britishness you talk about, Aaliyah, talk to me more about. Sorry, it's not your therapy session, but
it can be.
I'm just going to say it because I'm used to talking like that. Talk to me more about the Britishness and what you feel. How you feel you would have answered when someone asked you previously to now. Please.
Yeah, you know what I think it is? It is sort of that feeling, as Karen mentioned earlier, about wanting to fit in and things like that. But also I think back then I felt kind of insecure with my knowledge more than anything else. Because if someone had asked me, for example, to speak Patois, I still can't do it. So I feel like I felt like I had a stronger defense with the British thing, because I was like, I was born here, I've got a British passport, I celebrated, I can't remember what it was, but the Queen had an event.
But do you know about British history? Because I can't remember much about British history at all, actually. Nothing, pretty much nothing.
I can't say I know that much about Jamaican history specifically.
Yeah,
I think I know what I need to get through the world, and I have an understanding of, the horrendous things that have been done against Black people. But I can't say and sit here and
specific
say I've got like
Jamaican history. Yeah, I don't
exactly.
either.
and even just of our traditions. When I went to Jamaica, I learned so many things, small and large, where I was like, wow, I really had no idea what it was like to be out there and to live there. And I think, I think when I was younger, it was more that I just didn't really understand the Jamaican bit of myself. I think to some level it's a bit innate within me. Like I was always raised eating certain foods. I was always raised hearing my mum speak patois, usually when I was in trouble. And there were certain things like that I was used to. Whereas if someone had asked me about it, I think that would have made me go, well, I don't really know what that means. I don't know what it means to be Black or what it means to be Jamaican or anything like that. And African is even further away, because I had a similar situation to Jada, where there were more Black people in secondary school than primary school, but I wasn't in with them. And I think a lot of people saw me and the other Black girl in our friendship group as sort of Oreos, which is really horrible, but that was kind of the terminology used at the time, where it was like, you look Black, but you don't act it. And then that comes back to,
oh gosh,
well, how do you act it?
Yeah, how do you act Black? Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, I did things like musical theatre, but then it's not like Black people can't do those things. It's just that it happened that the people in my school who were Black weren't interested. Do you know what I mean? So I think it was, I think as a child, I would have really wanted to be considered just British, to be honest, if I'm being really real with myself. But now I kind of not prefer the opposite, because England is my home. It is where I was born and raised, but there are definitely implications with that I don't love and that I don't agree with. Like, for example, I wouldn't call myself a royalist. And I think on a global scale, that's what's kind of one of the biggest things we're known for, is having the monarchy, especially the Queen, before she passed. That was the thing we were known for, and it was in our like iconography and everything. But I have never really vibed with it. I don't have anything against them personally, but it's not something I'm going to celebrate. Like the King's coronation recently, I wasn't going to be one of those people in the streets, really excited, wearing the Union Jack and whatever. I just don't think. Really, Leah? I thought that would be you personally, with the Union Jack, waving a flag the whole day for hours.
If she's waving any flag, it's black, green, and gold.
Yeah.
Not Union Jack with a little hat on, little plastic hat on.
I saw one of those at the pub. I didn't even know it was happening, to be honest. I didn't know the coronation was happening until the Sunday before Mum left for Jamaica, because we went to Tesco's and I saw big like signs and everything. And I was like, oh yeah, that's happening, isn't it?
You made some really, really interesting points. You really have, and thank you for being so honest and open about that. One of the things that you said that really struck me was, what does it mean to be British? So when I was talking to my youngest today, she was saying, actually, when I think about it, what does that actually mean? She said, when I think of my Britishness or Britain, she said, I think of fish and chips, I think of the monarchy, and I think of football. And I was like, yeah.
That's not really us. Like, that wasn't ours to begin with.
She didn't think of alcohol in the pubs?
Oh, she's too young for that. She's only 14, so I'm glad.
I was going to say, I don't think she's at the pub.
It'd been quite worrying if she had thought about that. But yeah, she was like, fish and chips, football, the monarchy. And she's like, well, I like fish and chips, but there doesn't seem to be a lot to...
Exactly, and so much of that is stolen anyway. Like, I remember there was a song on Horrible Histories that really stuck with me. This is such a random reference. But in the song, it's basically talking about how so much of things we consider British or British culture were just things from other places that we decided to adopt. So then it's like, if I identify as British, well, then technically you're identifying with a bunch of different things culturally that just happened, through colonization to land in England.
Definitely.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because
definitely
this country is built on the backs of other people's sweat. Really, so
it is. Like, no one really is. People that say, "Oh, well, I'm pure British." Well, they're not really, are they? Often, most people are not. When they look right back through their family lineage, they might have Irish or Scottish, or I don't think there's anyone I've ever met that's 100% pure British. But yeah, I mean, cucumber sandwiches, Aaliyah. Where are they from, do you think? They've got to be British, surely. Cucumber sandwich.
That might be one unique thing. I don't even like them.
And the other thing about the monarchy is that whether you're a royalist or not, well, what I would say is that a lot of people would say that they haven't kept up with the times, right? They are not, they don't seem terribly current. So yes, there were lots of people who queued up to watch this, coronation in the rain. Fair play to them, I'm not judging. But lots of people would say they haven't really kept up with the times, and they know that Kate and I always get them around the wrong way. It's William, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're the young royals, and they want them to lead the monarchy into the 21st century and all that. But I don't think they have. I think they really need to change. Well, I don't know.
They're not really liked, are they, though? They're not even really liked very much either, though. They're not really kind of, I don't know.
I'd say my generation, probably not.
Really? Would you say your generation not really? That's the thing.
You should see the jokes people make online when things with the royal family happen. Like, some people are brutal. But I don't think they can really, drive themselves into, the new age or whatever.
Oh, no.
Because for that to happen, they would then have to admit retroactively that their ancestors did horrible things, and they'd have to give up a lot of the things that I imagine they like,
they won't.
Riches, and exactly that's not gonna.
No, that'll never happen.
They'd probably have to give up themselves, wouldn't they? Really?
Yeah,
exactly.
Sacrifice themselves.
Because
like a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, they probably would. If you really want to be current and relevant and really make a difference, you'd probably have to step down.
And certain people would have to be in prison and things like that.
The wealth and power divide couldn't sustain if you want to be relevant. You have to give back the things you've stolen, earn your own money like everybody else, and pay taxes like everybody else.
Be so sheltered.
Yeah, and they were exempt from, I think, how many laws they're exempt from? Most of them, including the equality law. They've exempted themselves from it.
Wow.
And taxes. So there is no way.
We all know which prince I'm thinking of.
Yes, we do.
So... And I think that kind of makes it harder to be proud of it. If they suddenly had a change of heart, I do not foresee this happening. If they suddenly had a change of heart and was like, we're giving back the jewels that we stole from India and Africa, and we're really making a difference, maybe I would be a little bit prouder to be British. But I agree with the feeling of it. It can be quite shameful, especially on a global level, because we look ridiculous at times, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that you said that really struck me was the fact that you said you didn't know a lot about sort of Jamaican history, and you also don't know a lot about African history, which is why you find it difficult to identify with those places. Not so much Jamaica now, but I think that would be true of myself. I don't know a lot about Jamaican history. Not really. I was thinking, what's the national flower? Don't know. Is the national dish still ackee?
I have no idea.
I'm asking Kay this. It is, isn't it? That's a national dish. But I know so little. But for me, my identity doesn't really come from knowing the history of a place. Perhaps it should do, but that's not really what I base it on. For me, it's more my cultural practices. So when you said certain foods that you eat, I was always raised to eat certain things. It was the music, it was, patois, all those things that for me were really, really important. And that really formed much of my identity.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially nowadays with the internet and things like that, things kind of cross over in a way. So I imagine that there are some things I would feel, being that I, live in England, my friends are English or whatever, that like American Black people wouldn't feel or maybe wouldn't agree with.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
It's different how you ended up in those places and how your family and your ancestors got there. I mean, for me, it's quite obvious. It's quite my mother. She moved here, and I don't have to go too far back. And I think that also helps Mum keep the culture with me and my brother within us as much as she can, because that's all she's ever known. But if I were to have a child, for example, which who knows, in this economy, no. But if I were to have a child, would I even have anything to pass on to them, if that makes sense? So then does that take away from what I have going on?
Well, you would, because you'd pass on the bits that you got from your mum, the bits you got from your dad, and the bits that you've acquired yourself.
You would. You pass on you. You pass on who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I grew up with absolutely no idea about any kind of, you know, Black culture, Black heritage, Black history, absolutely nothing about what it meant to be a Black person. And I'm still really, you know, proud to be a Black woman. And I want to pass on what I do know about being a Black woman to my daughter. And okay, I don't know, I'm not the most read person when it comes to Black history, but I guess like you said, Karen, it's about what you do have and passing it on to your children. And I think if you did have children, Aaliyah, then I think you'd be great at passing on, you know, what it means to be a Black person in today's society.
I mean, I can't live without rice and peas and cornmeal, so definitely at the very minimum they'll have that.
Just keep grandma close, all is well.
Of course you will be. Oh gosh, you won't
Karen,
be sick with me.
No such thing. To answer your question, yes, the national fruit is ackee. The national bird is the doctor bird or the swallowtail hummingbird, and the national flower is the lignum vitae. But
now, did you have to look that up, Kay? Did you, or did you know?
Yeah, only because I know the colloquial. Because I did it in school, and I used to get beaten to know these things. I knew the fruit was ackee, but I can't. I was thinking, is there a national dish? No, curry goat, jerk chicken. We serve them at everything, so possibly. And I knew it was a hummingbird. I just wanted to find a picture of it.
Yeah.
And the lignum vitae, yes, I did know that. But sometimes you question yourself and your brain is in menopause about what you actually do know.
To be fair, now I'm thinking about it, I guess living as a Black person, it will give you at least something of a perspective, at least for what the current world looks like. So even if you don't have an understanding of history or a particularly strong one, have it, even just my lifetime of 2004 to now and hopefully many years forward, that's at least something, you know?
Absolutely.
I'd be able to have conversations with my child that pertain to that, because ultimately they will have Black in them. Like even if I had a child with a white man and the child was white passing, which is possible, Mum's shaking her head. You know, even if my child was white passing, if someone sees me with my child, they're going to put two and two together and go, oh, wait a minute. You know, it will change how people look at you. And I hope that by the time they're in school, they won't have to worry about people being ignorant. But
I hope by the time they're in school, you don't have to send a letter to say I'm actually their grandmother and I can pick them up.
Yeah.
But I will say, parenting you and your brother. So from my perspective, my home was always Black-centric. But I remember the school days, starting with preschool, 3 years old. This child has a crisis, comes home sobbing. They're making little avatars on a computer at school. There was none that matched her skin and none that matched her hair. And she says, I want to have yellow down hair. Yeah, she was so distraught. There were no Black avatars, nothing. At 3 years old, sobbing her eyes out. It's like, oh my God. And your brother went through the same schools as you. He didn't even bat an eyelid. But that she's so young, thought, I can't see myself represented here. And I always knew you were going to be a social justice warrior, because at 3 years old to pick that up. But then there were the school days when you dress up in your national flag. And black, green, and gold. You know, and she's like, no, blue, red, and white. Everybody's wearing blue, red, and white. Let's not be controversial. Then if there is Olympics or anything, we're cheering for Jamaica first. If Jamaica loses, then we'll cheer for England, but never England first. So it was always a battle between the two. I could see why it's not so easy for you, Aaliyah, to pick your identity, because you are British in terms of where you're born and raised, and you sound like immersed in that culture more than you're immersed in the Jamaican culture.
But then if I was born in Jamaica, that might have been different.
No doubt. It would be very different. So it's not the easiest thing to pass on your culture whilst you're raising your child in a different culture. But I feel like I've done enough. And my bookshelf is blackety, blackety, black. So you have so much reading. And so is my social media. Well, you always tell me that. So I feel like I can only immerse you through resources like that.
And to be fair, I think in retrospect you did, but I think at the time I sort of rejected it a little bit because I think it felt very isolating. And that would have, again, in a different context, that would have been completely different. But being that for a lot of these kids, I'm particularly thinking of primary school and secondary school right now, I was the first Black person they'd ever interacted with or seen. But also for a lot of them, they don't know what to do with that, but I knew what to do with white people, if that makes sense. So it almost felt like the path of least resistance.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I think as I got older, that changed. Secondary school, I really took issue with things that I was noticing. But in primary school, I definitely just kind of went along with it, and I wanted my hair straightened all the time, and which was great for heat damage, and things like that. But as I got older, I think I've slowly become more and more confident and proud of who I am, and I feel a bit more able to say, wait a minute, that's not right. Like I remember in school, 2 years in a row, we had to read books with the N-word in them, which was Of Mice and Men was first, and that was sort of horrific. I remember the way my teacher did it, we all got assigned characters and we read the characters' parts. Now I got a character really early on because I could do a Southern accent and it's set in the South. So my character wasn't Black, which I didn't care. One person's character was a slave owner. So you can imagine every other word in this speech was the N-word. And if you studied this, you'll know what I'm on about. And everyone in the room was just staring at me. And I understand now that they were probably just trying to be like, are you good? Like, what's going to happen? It's an awkward situation. But at the time, I just wanted, I was angry, but I also just wanted the floor to swallow me up. I was like, I don't want everyone looking at me, and expecting something, because I don't know what the right reaction to that is. So I emailed that teacher and I said, I don't agree. I was so angry I wrote a poem. Like,
That's a good point too.
Yeah, so I sent him an email and I was like, I don't think it's right that you said that they can say it, even if it's within the context of education. I don't think that's right. And he ended up adding a lesson to the curriculum where we all had to do research on different things that happened to Black people, so like lynching and stuff in the South. And I mean, I don't know if that really helped, because by that point the damage was done. These kids now understood that saying the N-word was, at least in some way, okay. You've already put that in their mind, the seed is planted, you can't change that. And then the year after that, we did Lord of the Flies. And to be fair, the N-word is only used once and it's right at the end of the book. So I made it through the whole first bit just fine. Bored, but fine. Got to the bit with the N-word and I was so upset I cried, one. But second, I just stopped reading. So we had a class afterwards and my teacher was like, Aaliyah, it's like you didn't read the end. And I was like, no, I didn't, because at that point, I don't want to read about that. Why would I?
Yeah.
Like
my frustration with. Sorry, Tony. Go on.
Like if you ask British kids to read a book that was mocking the monarchy or something like that, or something that means a lot to British people, or just mocking British people in general, would they then accept that? Would it be okay that I felt okay about that, or would you, would it change things?
I hated the curriculum because even from primary school, they did a little bit on the slave trade.
A little bit. It was
nothing
a term.
else. It was a whole term. But guess what?
Whole term.
Her counterparts took from that Black people were slaves. Because out of context, our history does not start and end with slavery, but that's all they included in the curriculum. So already you're setting up a dynamic where the white people are slave owners and the Black people are slaves. It's then repeated in Of Mice and Men. You can play a slave owner. We see so much reenactment of nonsense going on in schools because the curriculum is so tiny. Yeah. When they do, it's almost as if they have to include it. Fine, we'll include the bit that demeans you.
And you know what's worse about that? It's not good either way, because either, like you're saying, people will take that on and, that will be embedded in them, or it's just really uncomfortable. Because I remember after those classes, my friends would, be coddling me a bit. And I didn't need that, because by that time I had been on the internet, which is a horrible place for a child. but I was aware of things. So it wasn't like I was personally hurt. It was more just like, this is really awkward. And I just don't see the benefit of it. And I didn't then. And that's what sort of started me on the path of maybe I should start saying things, and
reading different texts.
So I have to say, in schools now, well, 2 schools in our local area that I'm thinking about, they have changed that. And those books now don't use the N-word. They are either blanked out or they use something as a substitute. Yeah, because...
Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm so happy about that.
She had a similar experience, but they knew not to use the word. Yeah. So things are changing, right? So...
That's good.
Yeah, it's necessary. It needs to change. In terms of the curriculum, we're still a really, really long way behind because history is subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
and to be fair, it is getting better all the time because when Aaron was in school, my brother, he said that he didn't mention it at the time, but by the time I was doing it and I was bringing up these problems at home, he was like, I think he said the teacher had asked him to read the N-words.
Right.
So because he has the past, for lack of a better word, he will just say all of them. And it's like, when you think about that spiritually and emotionally, and maybe he didn't feel that strongly about it or read that much into it, but you're asking someone to repeat a word that is extremely hurtful just over and over again. And that's your only role is to allow us to, I don't know, not enjoy, I don't want to say enjoy, but to take in this media. That's your job. You have to give us, that's almost like saying, can you now give us permission to do that? It was a horrible word. And
which is why I think now that they have started to change the books, subsidize that word for something else. I think it's a lot better. And the other thing you talked about, Aaliyah, which I just wanted to pick up on, was that you said when you were at school, because you enjoyed musical theatre and perhaps some of the other children of colour didn't do that, it was almost as if you had to, you were picking a side and you were on, the white side or another side. That's a really, really important thing to talk about. And the reason I say that is because it's almost as if being black is a sort of shared experience, and therefore we all like the same thing. All white people like the same thing, which is ridiculous. I remember when I was at school, I loved performing arts. And you're right, I didn't have lots of friends who did the same thing as me. Not lots of black friends anyway, lots of white friends did it. And I remember feeling like I felt as if I wasn't quite black enough for my black friends, but I wasn't quite white enough because I wasn't white.
Yeah.
But it was, I like these things that seem to be associated with white people. But as of and I just think, how crazy is that? We like lots of different things. What does it mean to be black? That's why I think, talking about identity for me is quite important.
Yeah. I think, especially with things like theatre, I think it's also a thing of representation. So a lot of people don't see that they could get there. Like I'm thinking of 2 things from college. So I went to musical theatre college for a year. And when I was there, it was a small college to be fair, but it was in Bromley. And there was only like 6 black people. No, more like 10 actually. But there wasn't that many of us. Like for the area it's in, you would think.
But do you know what? That's probably to do also with finances, because for a lot of people, you have to be able to afford that. And that's not to say that black people can't afford.
But it is very elitist.
But it's very, very elitist. That's the first thing. On top of that, I would say averagely, black families or black parents tend to encourage their children to do things that are lucrative because they're thinking about longevity of something. They're thinking, what will serve you in the long term. And performing arts is so, I don't know, what do we call that?
My teacher on one of the first days, one of my jazz teachers said, guys, let's think about why we do this because none of us are doing it for the money.
Absolutely. And, you're only going to have a small amount of people who will make it to the point that they can actually earn a living off this thing, right? So I do find that lots of black families don't encourage their children to do things like that, creative arts, that sort of thing, because...
And then I think that sends the message that black people don't enjoy those things.
Yeah, exactly, which is completely the opposite. It's not that we don't enjoy it, it's just that we don't necessarily have the resources to be able to explore in something that we're not necessarily going to be able to make a living out of. Does that make sense? So
definitely. There's no like, and there were some white people even there that it was a very expensive school, but being able to afford that, you're doing all this training literally just for a chance. And if you have a bunch of generational wealth to fall back on,
absolutely,
then that's fine. Do what you want. But if you don't have that and you need to make this work,
and you need to be able to support yourself financially, then that's not necessarily encouraged. So that's definitely been my experience. It's a shared experience, something that you talked about, which is that perhaps some of my choices were seen as things enjoyed by white people, but when you unpick it, you can see why it might have been seen that way.
Yeah, definitely.
And I have to say, I think everybody, myself included, wanted yellow down hair. I used to draw pictures. I never forget, I used to draw pictures of girls and everybody had yellow down hair. And I was one of those girls I was drawing.
Yeah, I think I did as well. If I think back to my childhood drawings, and I grew up in Jamaica, I think there were yellow haired.
You remember you and Auntie Doreen had a conversation where I actually experienced the opposite thing, but you guys were saying when you were younger, you used to put like clothes pegs on your nose to try and make them skinnier.
Towels around your head to have hair.
Or a slip. Do you remember a slip?
Or a slip, yes.
Because it had a nice bit of elastic. And
or a slip to whip your hair.
And I think some of that is because we are bombarded with images of white women with yellow down hair. You put TV on, that's what I saw growing up.
Yeah.
And very rarely did I see that. Pardon?
And even white people feel that.
Yeah.
Like people who bleach their hair to be blonde because you get told, that's the ideal, that's
it's like a subliminal message that's sort of just been drip fed to us, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it hurts white people, but then it hurts black people even more because they can never believably achieve that. Do you know what I mean? Like I had blonde hair for 2 years, but everyone knew it wasn't my actual hair color.
I've had a blonde wave and
I've had blonde.
Yeah.
Now I look great in blonde, but it's not my natural.
The thing is now, though, I think things have changed a lot. So I think, my girls definitely have embraced their own hair. They love their own hair. They braid it. They have it out. I think things have really, really moved on. Things have changed. And I think we just have to keep pushing forward. And I think that generations to come, there will be new identities because what it will mean to my children to be Black British will be different to what it meant to me. They won't have Lovers Rock. I don't think my children know what Lovers Rock even is. It meant something to me, but it will be I don't know, is it grime? What I don't
agree.
know.
I 100% agree. I think Gen Alpha is going to be doing better than any of us were. And that's kind of ironic to say because obviously you guys, considering one of you is my mum, are a little bit older than me. But even then I feel it's only getting better and better and things are changing, which is ultimately what we want. And I think, by the time I'm having kids, I imagine half of the stuff that I experience, like a random white kid doing the Wakanda Forever symbol at me, they won't experience that because hopefully the education will be better and the white kids will know that's a little bit weird.
Yeah. And also, just lastly, I was going to say that British culture is changing because there is an influx of new people. There is new blood. There are new cultures. And I think people are afraid of change. But actually, it's always been that way. Nothing stays the same. Cultures evolve, they grow, they change. They are dynamic, they're diverse. And that's the nature of it, isn't it? And all these people are so afraid of losing whatever it is that they think is inherently British. What does that even mean?
And the thing is, those things will always still exist because they happened. Even if in a far future we, abolish the monarchy, it will always have been a thing and you can always enjoy that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter how things change, if you want to celebrate the past, you can. There is absolutely, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think it is funny that people are so scared of change. But it's kind of like the trend cycle in a way. Things are going to change, things are going to come back, it's always changing. But we hope that every time it gets better than it was for previous generations.
We hope so.
That's right.
For Sarah and Aaliyah, maybe for all of us, but particularly thinking of Sarah and Aaliyah, I remember the ending of the exercise at the conference I went to. The conclusion was who do you think you are? Your identity is how you feel inside rather than what's externally visible. So identity starts at home, in here, in your heart.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So any final word, ladies? Or words? We can have a few.
I think what you said was really quite important. That identity is, what you feel. It doesn't even have to be. Sometimes it may not be something that you see. You may not see a person and think of a particular ethnicity, or you might think one thing and actually they identify something else. So I definitely think it comes from within. I would agree with that.
I agree. Yeah, totally. I agree.
All right. Yeah. So who would like to take us on our outro? I've spoken a lot today, but from me, it's great to be back. I hope our Spotify listeners are patient with us.
Content, finally.
Yeah. So how can we be contacted? Aaliyah, as our showrunner and our guest, would you like to?
I've got a title now. If you want to find us on Instagram, we're Beautifully Melanated Podcast. In our bio, there is a link tree that will take you to all the places you can listen to the podcast. And like Mum said before, please do check out the 2 lives. I was behind the camera, so I can verify they are very good. Besides that, we have a YouTube channel as well. And we have an email. We haven't plugged that in a while. beautifullymelanatedpodcast@gmail.com. So feel free to get in touch with us. And on the Instagram page, there is a post about our phone number as well, if you want to send us a text.
Great.
Thank you,
Aaliyah.
Fabby. Might just record that and just put it over each episode.
That'd be helpful for me, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would, Karen.
Karen, you didn't say devil's advocate.
I didn't have to be this time. We need a more controversial topic next time.
Well, we'll humor you with that. But for us, from us, it's bye for now. See you next time.
All right. Bye. See ya. Bye.
We are beautifully